Today we are going to be starting a new standard. This is Standard 2 for Advanced Biology, which is biochemistry. So you might be asking yourself, why are we talking about chemistry if this is biology? Well, every living thing is made up of elements and atoms that are all put together. And there are some that are specifically how biological molecules or living things are put together. So we're going to talk about some of those because we'll be talking about carbon compounds kind of all year long. So this is kind of just a little bit of background information to set us up for when we talk about cells and cell structure, the membrane, metabolism when we talk about photosynthesis and cell respiration. So this is just a little bit of background for that, okay? So the first thing we're going to talk about, what is matter? Nothing. What's the matter with you? Sorry, I couldn't resist. All right, I really like this picture. This is Albert Einstein, if you didn't know. And he says, you are living, you occupy space, you have a mass, you matter. And really, you do matter. But what he's saying is, matter is just stuff that takes up space, okay? So anything that's in your environment is made up of matter. So if you ever hear that word, that's what that means, just space. Things that take up space. This is a picture of the periodic table of elements. We're not going to talk about this too much and focus on this picture so much in our biology class. What we do need to look at, though, is we need to be a little bit familiar. I want you to see right here is hydrogen, and right here there's a number 1, okay? We have over here on this side carbon, and that has a number 6, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphate. Those are the ones that we will talk the most about, okay? So I want you to be a little bit familiar with those words, and I want you just to recognize the numbers. You don't have to memorize them, but those numbers will be important in just a minute. The rest of the elements are important, but not for what we talk about in our class. You'll spend a lot of time in chemistry going over all of them and what they mean. All right, so first we're going to talk about atoms. And atoms are the very teeny tiniest molecule of anything that you see, okay? If you look at this picture right here, atoms are made up, you see this kind of funky, it's like a little ball in the middle with these things that are orbiting around it. This little ball in the middle is actually the nucleus, and the nucleus is made up of protons and neutrons. The protons are positive, and I remember that because the two P's go together. They kind of sound alike. So protons are positive. The neutrons are neutral. And that is actually what makes up most of the mass. So where the weight, I guess you could say, comes from in that atom. Now remember, these are teeny tiny. You can't even see them with a microscope, especially the microscopes we're going to use in class. This out here is the electron cloud, and these electrons are just kind of orbiting around the nucleus. The electrons, these little teal-colored balls right here that are represented in this picture, have a negative charge, all right? So if you look here, it says opposites attract, and what that means is the positive part is attracted to the negative part of the atom, which is why the electrons kind of orbit around that nucleus. And then it also says atoms are just a lot of empty space. The largest part of the atom that takes up the most space is actually this electron cloud, even though it's just a lot of empty space while those electrons orbit around, okay? So this is the main largest part of the atom, even though most of the mass is centered in the nucleus. So if I ever say the electron cloud, this is the part that I'm talking about, okay? And these are pointing, those arrows are pointing to the electrons. There's a closer picture so you can see. All right, so here is a carbon atom, and carbon is like basically the backbone of life. So carbon is in almost every biological molecule that we will talk about. If you look here, carbon has 6 protons, and it also has 6 neutrons. And remember I said those are located in the nucleus, and you can't see them all. Some of the protons and neutrons are located on the backside of that nucleus that you can't see. But right here you see those pluses, those are the protons, okay? The red ones are the neutrons. Remember, those are neutral. They have no charge. Now, in here are the electrons. The reason I'm showing you this picture, I really like it because this shows you the rings that make up the electron cloud. The first ring that is located around the nucleus can only fit 2 electrons. Okay, so we've got an electron here. Oops. Okay, sorry. We have an electron here, and we have an electron here. That innermost ring is full, okay? Every other ring after that can hold up to 8 electrons, and atoms really like to be full. So if it's not a full outer ring, if you look here, this atom only has 4 electrons on the outer ring. So total it has 6 electrons, but the outer ring only has 4. It's not very full. It still has space for 4 more electrons. So because of that, it's going to bond really easily to other atoms. Okay, and that's actually why carbon is such an amazing biological molecule, because there's lots of room for making bonds with other atoms. All right, so this is important that you remember. The innermost electron cloud can only fit 2. The outermost electron cloud can fit up to 8, and there can be numerous electron clouds that build up and move outside. So there could be like 8 electron rings in this electron cloud. This one only happens to have 2. Now I'm going to show you another picture. This picture is looking at 2 atoms that have come together. This is actually 2 different oxygen molecules, and if you look here, they've got them in different colors just so you can see the difference. If you look in the very center of each of them, it says that they have 8 protons and 8 neutrons, and it's the same over here, 8 protons and 8 neutrons, okay? That means they should also have 8 electrons. So let's count the red ones. 1, 2, so those are the electrons that are in the first ring, and remember, it can hold only 2, up to 2, so this ring is full. And now let's move to the next ring. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's not quite full yet, okay? And the same is true for this oxygen atom. There's 2 electrons in that first ring, and there are 6 electrons, if you count the purple ones, there are 6 electrons in that outer ring. So both oxygen atoms are almost full, but they're not quite there yet. Because of that, they're going to have an affinity for sharing that electron space with something else. So here you can see that they are sharing these electrons, so that makes this atom feel like its outer electron ring is full. And it also makes this atom feel like its outer electron ring is full. So now these 2 oxygen molecules are happy, and this is actually showing you O2, which is the type of oxygen that we breathe. Lucky for us. All right, so that is a very brief overview on atoms and the makeup of those atoms, and the most important part that we're going to focus on are the electrons of the atoms. It's important that you understand that, because in our next lesson, you need to understand how the electrons work and how they need to feel full and all of that to understand polar molecules and what we're going to talk about with that. So make sure if you have any questions, you write them down in your notebook and come ask me when you get to class.